So let's continue on this train of positivity and let's move to the peanut gallery. We have underperforming veterans. With a new regime coming in, see, this is one of those things that is just like, we got to make something happen here. Because there are, let's see, we played 116 games. So I'm going to try to do quick math. That's 46 games left. Right? Yeah. 46 games left. You would think over these 46 games that there would be guys that are like, my job's on the line. The new guy coming in, the GM coming in, has no loyalty to any of these players. Some of them are under contract. Sure, I get that. Like, Javi Baez is not going anywhere unless he opts out after 2023. Andrew Chafin technically could opt out this year if he wanted to. Eduardo Rodriguez cannot opt out until after 2023. Miguel Cabrera cannot be bought out until after 2023. But there's some guys. Jonathan Schoop, who's got 1 year left on his deal. Jeimer Candelario, who's entering his 3rd year of arbitration, which is usually the higher number. Are the Tigers going to pay for the performance that they've gotten on the field this year? Now with Schoop, they have to, right? They've signed a contract, it's guaranteed. So Schoop most likely is not in jeopardy of not being on the team next year, but I bet his role changes. So let's look at some numbers, right? Candelario had a really good pandemic year, only 60 games. Seemed like he was fitting into the Tigers in the Major League role in 2021. And my good friend Tyler Cotilla wrote an article about Jeimer Candelario on Detroit Sports Nation, so make sure that you check that out. Comparing those stats and really breaking it down from a scout's point of view. Fantastic article. But this year, Candelario, 10 home runs. 199 average. 72 weighted runs created, 28% below Major League average. A 24.2% K rate, which is a tick up from where it was in 20 and 21. But his base on balls percentage, his walk percentage is way down. Last year, he was at a 10.4% walk rate. This year, he's at a 6.1%. And defensively, it's not like we're keeping him in the lineup for his glove. -2 defensive runs saved and -3 outs against average. It's not even a very good defender. With him coming up on his 3rd year of arbitration, there is a very high possibility Candelario gets non-tendered and is not wearing a Detroit uniform next year. Now, his 162-game average projects him to be a solid MLB player, but do you take the chance or do you give that spot to somebody who maybe you sign? And we'll talk about some names. I don't know. Jonathan Schoop, only 8 home runs this year. 202 average. 51 weighted runs created, which means he's 49% below Major League average. Striking out 22% of the time, walking 3.5% of the time, which is the 3rd lowest in his career. But he's never truly been above 5% walk, so it's really not that big of a drop-off. But he's the opposite of Candelario, right? He's 7 defensive runs saved, 24 outs above average. So at least his defense is good enough to keep him in the lineup. But these are 2 players specifically that I would look for a shakeup. Victor Reyes is entering his 2nd year of arbitration. Everybody else is young enough that they're going to be cheap enough if they were to be kept around. Now, some could get non-tendered for sure. And just kind of start over and wipe the slate clean a little bit. Okay? But there's going to be a lot of decisions that this GM coming in has to make. And the biggest ones are going to be staring you on the screen right now. Candelario and Schoop. What do you do with these guys? Now, there's some wish list free agents that are going to be available. I don't know if any of them would come to a Detroit, but maybe they will, depending on who the GM is and what the situation is. But it's been rumored that Carlos Correa is opting out of his deal. But, of course, why would he not opt out of his deal with that contract that Minnesota gave him? And I'm hoping that the next team that signs him does not give him that crazy of a contract, because it's not working out for Minnesota. They're second in the AL Central and most likely could miss the playoffs. Nolan Arenado from the St. Louis Cardinals could also opt out. Trey Turner's a free agent. Dansby Swanson's a free agent. Those are like wish lists, big wish lists. Like, those are going to cost you a mint and maybe beyond the scope of reality. No pun intended. But another contributor to Detroit Sports Nation, one of our editorial manager, Bob Herman, suggested a reunion of sorts with Jose Iglesias, and I can't say that I disagree with him. First of all, I was on the train that thought that Iglesias should have never been let go to begin with, because we know the hole that shortstop has been for us, and why not keep somebody like Iglesias around? But Iglesias has been good this year. 3 home runs, but he's not a power guy. 314 average. 102 weighted runs created. A 336 weighted on base percentage. Defense seems to be a little bit down. -4 defensive run save, but that's better than Candelario. And 1 outs above average. He's also a 3.4 WAR player this year. Could you slot Iglesias into this lineup and say, as Bob argued, the 2-hole? Getting on base in front of guys who hopefully will have an uptick in production next year, like a Javi Baez? Because there is an adjustment period coming from the National League to the American League. Could that then alleviate some pressure from Baez if you slid him over to second base? And you're like, well, what do you do with Schoop? Well, you're paying him for a year, and guess what he becomes? He becomes insurance against Torkelson to play first base, because we know Schoop has played first base, and could also be slid over to third base because we know that he has the arm for it. But this is what we're talking about when we talk about this roster, is there's so many holes. And yeah, there's players that can play multiple positions. But are you losing productivity when you have them play these multiple positions? Most of the time, yeah, you are. We saw it in Game 3 against the White Sox. Eric Haas in left field. Cody Clemens at first base. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens when this new GM comes in. And there are guys that are going to be fighting for a spot on this roster next year. So it would behoove this team over the next 46 games to show out. I don't know if they can necessarily, but if they want a job on a major league team next year, they need to show out. They need to show out in a major way, because this is all an audition. These next 46 games are an audition. Whoever that GM is going to be looking at the production, specifically down the stretch. What type of players do we have? And how well can I construct this roster and get creative in a way that'll put a winning product on the field? For a decade, the Detroit Tigers were synonymous with winning. And now, in the next decade, they become synonymous with losing. The question is, who's going to change that narrative? I've had my thoughts, and I think that, we got to figure out who's going to be that guy to change the narrative. You got to turn the page. You got to move on. Can't keep writing this chapter, because this chapter needs the biggest of periods put on it and the fastest of page turns, because it's getting real old real quick. This has been The Corner. I am AJ Reilly. I will see you again before our next series with the Los Angeles Angels when they come to town. I do want to remind you to hit that like button, click subscribe, and pound that bell so you can get notifications from Detroit Sports Nation, because we cover everything. And don't forget to follow The Corner on Twitter at DSN at The Corner. I will see you before the next series, and as always, go Tigers.
Man on a mission, I'ma get it. You know I be on a what? Yeah.